Welcome to LogScope and Multiwell Stereonets and the workflow associated with them. We will start with going to the map view and showing how you can produce a cross-section from multiple wells. You simply circle the wells, draw your line, and produce a cross-section. I've already built a filter called Basic Image, and we'll show that, and we'll show the cross-section which is shown here. Cross-section with the stereonets correlated is extremely useful, and it allows you to correlate the various features. This is shown as we zoom out and show you the full section. If we go back to the map view, we're now going to show you how to do the stereonets and plot the well superimposed on one stereonet. One simply selects the stereonet button in the multi-well option, and the stereonet is produced, and it shows all the points on a default lower hemisphere view. We can switch on the legend so we can actually see which wells are plotted and what color they are. The setup button allows you to see the parameters in the stereonet, and you can change the color to status, you can change the projection, and you can change from lines to poles. You can also change the contouring as well. The contouring allows Schmidt or CAM, and here we change the color from a clear to green to red palette. One can add rose plots and walkout plots to the plot by just tapping on the button, and once selected you can also add annotation to the walkout plot. The status for each style of plot that you introduce into the stereonet plot can also be used to control which dips and which status colors you actually present. Here we have only changed the statuses for the walkout, but you can change the status for the walkout, for the poles, and for the rose petals independent of each other. If we go back to the options view, we can actually change how the stereonet is presented. So if we add to the navigator zones, it will plot each of the wells on top of each of the zones and will label each of the wells accordingly. You can also change this to be status types instead of wells. So you have a great deal of flexibility, and we can walk through each of the zones. And with the walkout plots being plotted just for the various status we've chosen, which are depositional statuses, we can see the dispersion pattern from each of the wells, and in certain zones see the formations that were deposited in the same direction. Being able to present these plots in a consolidated manner is also important, so we've introduced the concept of multi-plot. And this allows you to present the plots on a single page or multiple pages stacked by row and column, and you can choose wells, zones, and status types to actually plot them. In this case, we're going to do zones, and we're going to produce a plot that is 5 wide and 1 row. And we are going to display the formations, stereonets for each one, and display that so that you can actually see how it looks. So we set this up, and we put the row as 1, the columns as 1. We want the legend as 1 per page, and then we just hit OK, and we get a PDF file generated. And when we plot it, we get a PDF that kind of looks like this. So here comes the PDF that we load up, and there it is. If we go back to the setup, we can change it from displaying the wells as a solid color, and we can actually change the statuses on the walkout and on the various components to be what we want. And then we can go up to the actual points on the stereonet and change that to dip style, and then we can actually see the points by zone by dip style here. We can then go back to the multi-well plot, and we can produce those as a single page composite plot. So we go here into multi-well, and we're going to have statuses in addition to zones. So for each zone we'll have it broken out into the individual statuses, and there are 7 status types, and so we add that in. So we've got statuses and we've got zones, and then we need to adjust the number of rows and the number of columns, so we get that right, and then we can just hit OK, and it will produce a plot showing us the different statuses for each of the zones as a multi-page PDF file, which we'll show you just now. The next step, once it's generated that, is you have to save it to a PDF, and it presents you to actually put it in a directory. So we choose the directory that we want it in, and then we hit select, and then we open up that and we see the PDF here, and it's displayed by zone, which is labeled A, B, C, D, and the various status types for each zone. And all the components are put on the plot like so. And that's all there is to it. If we want to just display the poll, the walkout, and the rows plots, we have a button that we haven't talked about called wells. Now, the first step we're going to do is we're going to include the rows plot, switch on the walkout plot, and then we're going to select the status types that we want. We're going to change the color mode to be a solid color, and then once we get this right, we need to go into the walkout because we want to be selective. We don't want any fractures to be displayed, so we just choose the bedding types that we want, bed boundary, heterolithics, those sorts of things, and then we can just hit OK, and it will plot the data with the points. Now if we use the wells button here, we can actually lock all the wells, and we can either change or set that to none, and that will remove the points once it's set to none to be just rows plots and the walkout plot. And here we can walk through and we can actually see the various paleocurrent dispersal patterns that we see in the data. Now if we do the same thing as a walkout plot, 1, and we want 1 row and 6 plots, and we just want statuses, we're going to delete the statuses, and then we hit OK, and there we have the plot, and we'll just show it up now, and you can see the various walkout plots for each of the formations showing the rows plots and the walkouts, and you can see the various dispersal patterns for each of the formations. Thank you very much.